So I've preached on tears before, and I was overwhelmed one Sunday after the church service that I had preached at. A woman came to me to share her story of tears. She said that when her daughter found out she was pregnant with twins, she was very, very excited. But after a few doctor visits, she found out that her twins had a problem, and that after they would be born, they would only live for a few hours. Her priest had told her that whenever she was hit with grief in a moment of really a tearful moment for her children, to collect her tears in a cup and seal them and keep them. And so she did that. Every time the tears came, she collected them. And the day came that her twins were born. And the priest came to the hospital to be with the family, to be with the twins. And after they were born, they all gathered in the hospital room, and the priest went to baptize the twins. And he asked for the cup of tears. And he took those tears and poured them out upon the babies' heads and baptized them with their mother's tears. It was a heart-wrenching, beautiful, holy moment. Everybody in the hospital room experienced the sacredness and the power of tears. God created our tears to be sacred and powerful, something to be cherished and collected and remembered. As Psalm 56 says, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected my tears in your bottle." So there was a common practice in ancient times when there was like a serious death in the family, and all the relatives came together and gathered in a room together. They each would bring a little vial. It was a little glass bottle with a rounded edge. And they would sit and begin to grieve together. And they would begin to catch their tears. And they would go around to one another, to grandma, to aunt, to the children, and they would catch each other's tears. And those tears would build up in there from that moment. And at the end of that grieving time, they would seal it until next hardship would come, and they would unseal it and come back and collect the tears again. These tears were part of their most sacred possessions. And when they were buried, they would be buried with the tear bottle. Wouldn't it be beautiful right now if the world carried on this ancient tradition? Like, if each of us had one of these bottles, all of us carried one around, especially now. And in this time of great grief, we would take time to catch our brothers and sisters' tears right now, those who are hurting. We would go around, and if we saw somebody crying, we would catch their tear, and we would cry too. And they would catch ours. And our tears would mix together. Our sorrow would become as one. This very practice would make us mindful not only of our own tears, but the tears of others. Did you know that God created our emotional tears to be something that would connect us to one another. Now, there are 3 kinds of tears. There are basal tears, which are the tears that basically clean your eyes all day long and keep them wet so they can function. There are reflex tears, which come, well, when you cut an onion, they just pop up. Or if you hit your knee on a table or stub your toe, out of pain, tears come. There's also emotional tears, which I'm talking about today. Those ones that are almost painful, we feel it in our throat first. It feels like our head's going to explode, and they come out. So many, and they pour down our face from grief, sadness, joy, and even laughter. And though some species in this world shed tears out of pain or eye irritation and suffering, humans are the only ones that can spring tears out of emotion. Now, scientists have found evidence that emotional tears are chemically different than the ones people shed while chopping onions. There's an artist, a photographer, named Rosalind Fisher, who did a study on the different kind of tears dried under a microscope. You could go look her pictures up, Rosalind Fisher. And it's amazing the difference in the tears. The first one is tears of grief. The second one are onion tears. And the third one, laughing tears. But she has so many different tears, and they're made up of different chemicals. Physically different. Emotional tears not only contain more angry and sad hormones that the body wants to expel. Have you ever had a good cry and then you felt all better? You actually get rid of strong emotion when you're crying, hormones. But they also create more proteins. And this is interesting. There's a high protein content in emotional tears. And with this higher content, the tears are thicker and they stick more. And so they well up in your eyes and tend to stay on your face longer, making them more likely to be seen by others. There's a reason. Seeing others people's tears cause us to respond to them. I'm one of those people, if I see somebody crying, I am going to well up as much as they are. Tears pull others to respond to us, to help others in need. Tears connect complete strangers together on a deeper level. This story caught me a while ago. It was the first day of second grade for these 2 boys, and one of the boys was standing by himself crying. He has autism and was just struggling about this first day of school. And the other little boy named Kristine saw him crying and just came up and took his hand and held his hand all until the doors opened and the teachers could help. And those 2 became friends because of the connection of tears. The video even has their mothers talking and how precious that moment was. This is what the world would look like if we were mindful of each other's tears. If we took time to collect each other's tears. God created our tears to be sacred and powerful. Something to be cherished, collected, and remembered. You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. David wrote Psalm 56 during a time he had been captured by the Philistines in Gath. If you read the account in 1 Samuel 21, it's 10 through 15, we find out that the people in Gath had heard about David, and they were bragging about how he had such a great war victory over, more than Saul ever had. And they lifted him up, and David heard this and thought, oh no, they're going to be threatened by me, and they're going to come, and they're going to kill me. And in his fear, he decided to act like a madman. And so he would go to the city gates and just bang his head on it. And he even let drool dribble down his beard anytime somebody looked at him. And he thought, this way I'll go under the radar and they won't hurt me. You can obviously see that he is struggling during this time. He is desperate, afraid, and he has no ally. He's alone. But I believe one of the things that pulled him through this time is knowing that his God, the knowledge of his God, was that God was his ally, and not one of his tears that was shed would be lost without God catching it. You can almost picture David in this time with drool dribbling down his beard in the middle of this act, writing out this song, this psalm. And he cries out, you keep track of my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. Why are these tears so precious to God? You know, God throws our sins into the deep sea. Why does he collect our tears? Why does he keep them? Why are they so precious? It is because they are so pure and true. Nothing is more honest than a tear. It cannot be easy to be God. I mean, he can see through everything. 2 Chronicles 28 says, the Lord searches every heart, understands every motive behind the thoughts. So if you can imagine all the dishonesty in the world, God can see. God can see the insincerity behind our worship, our smiles, and our good deeds. He sees the motives that aren't fully focused on loving him or loving others. He sees when others use his name to edify themselves and not him. How heart-wrenching would it be to see as God does? But to God, our tears, they are different. Deep tears come from within, and they can't help but be pure in motive. And to God, that is a gift. And he wants to keep it. He wants to collect it as something to be cherished, collected, and remembered. You keep track of all our sorrows, and you have collected all my tears in your bottle. There is a moment of history in the Bible when God was given the gift of tears in such a precious way that it will never be forgotten. Luke 7, we take a look at a scene at a dinner party that Jesus was invited to. Jesus enters this party, and the hospitality was very poor. I mean, if they had one of those rating systems like we do now, it would maybe get a half star. A woman who was poor and rumored to be sinful saw Jesus enter this party. Nobody provided water for his feet or oil to anoint his head. And she knew who he was. So she ran home and got a few things. She wasn't going to let him not be cherished and loved. Now we know about the alabaster jar of oil that she came and broke and anointed Jesus with that was worth so much money. It was a precious gift that she could never build up that kind of money again in her life. But what we don't know is that she gave another precious gift. I always pictured her crying so hard and the tears coming down, washing his feet, and she would take her hair and wash his feet. But I read this last week, and it blew me away that I had never seen it, that she ran home and got her tear bottle full of tears from her family, from her sorrows, her shame, her hurt. And when she got to Jesus, her tears started to drop on his feet, and she broke the seal of her tear bottle and poured it on his feet. Her most precious possession that was to go to the grave with her, she was giving to Jesus to wash his feet. And as she washed his feet, her present day sorrows and her past came together. Could you imagine Jesus' heart swelling at that moment, at such a sacred, powerful gift? Her tears were a far more precious commodity to Jesus than that alabaster jar ever was. It is time for us to stop thinking of tears as weak. They are not weak. They are sacred and powerful. It is time to stop thinking of our tears as something with no value or a nuisance, like Jesus' dinner party thought they were. Again, they are precious, sacred, and a powerful gift. So as tears flow freely in the world, on the streets, in the hospitals, at the graveside, in our homes, in our churches, let us not look away. Let our eyes be drawn to them. Let us catch them. Each one is so precious. Let us know that these are the very tears that God is catching in his bottle. God is collecting them, cherishing them, and remembering them. For God keeps track of all our sorrows. You have collected all our tears in your bottle. Amen.